'Twas the fall of 2010, and my grandparents had just purchased a house in Palm Desert, California. And when I arrived for the first time, I remember asking, how much does this cost? How much was this house? And the first response I got from somebody in the room was, that's none of your business. Don't ask questions like that. You don't need the answer to that, or something along those lines. And I didn't think too much of it. I was a little bit hurt that my question was rejected like that, and it was a bit of a hit to the ego. But what I didn't know is that that question would affect me for quite some time. It would affect me. That response would affect me for quite some time. Because that was the first time I had asked about money. I grew up pretty well off. My parents were pretty well off. It was always comfortable for me. I didn't know if they were struggling, if they were doing well. But for me, I had everything that I needed. I had a decent amount of what I wanted, and it was good for me. My some of my grandparents' friends were pretty wealthy, so I was exposed to some money. I maybe rode in one or two Ferraris growing up, something like that. So I saw what was possible. I saw a little bit of what was out there, but you know, not even close to everything. I had all the limiting beliefs about money in the world, and this was the first one. This was the first one that money was a off-topic, private, rude thing to talk about. That you can never ask about money. This cemented in my mind when I was 9 or 10 years old, first arriving in Palm Desert, California. Getting that response cemented in my mind for a decade that money was evil almost. Money was unsafe. Money was off limits, and it was it it made me have fear around money. Whenever I thought about money, saw money, talked about money, there was fear involved because I had a negative reaction early on. And so I didn't know this for a long time. I didn't know that I was almost scared of money, afraid to talk about it, awkward, clueless, knew nothing about it, nothing about my finances. And then I started selling shoes. I had to get a little bit more used to it because, in the sneaker game, your money's coming in and coming out quickly. And so I had to shift my mind pretty quickly. But for up until that point, for about 10 years, I was scared to talk about money. I didn't know what I was doing. So sometimes I would spend it all in a day. Sometimes I would be so wanting to hold on, and I was scarce. I was scarce with money. And maybe, I didn't know this until recently. So now that I'm thinking about it, maybe because I never found out the price of the house, I thought it could have been. I had no idea. I didn't even know a range of what it could have been. So it was when I just shut down about money. Like I shut as soon as I asked how much is this house, and I heard that you shouldn't ask about that. For the next 10 years, whenever money would come up, I would just hide in my own mind, block it out because of one answer I got. And so I've been thinking about these things recently. I've been thinking about these events that have happened in my life that have shaped me, and I'm trying to almost regurgitate my life, you could say, because my whole life I I was just always focused on the past or focused on the future, so I never could enjoy it, and I've for, I've forgotten a lot of it, and I didn't know who I was for a long time. I wouldn't ever think. I wouldn't ever stop to think. I was always on technology. I could never be with a quiet mind. I would never think about these events, and you can't think about these events like why you are who you are, why you do what you do until you become aware. You need to be in control of your mind because for of course I felt a certain way about money when I wasn't in control of my mind, so it would just attack me and attack me. But there's things that you were told early on that shape you to who you are. And until you have to dig up under the surface why it is. I'm trying to figure out right now, why did me hearing that money's off limits and I shouldn't ask about it, why did that affect me so much? Because still to this day, I'll be honest, still to this day, I have some limiting beliefs about it. I catch myself sometimes from 10 years of wiring my brain in a certain way, of conditioning my brain in a certain way. It still affects me right now. And so this is with a lot of areas, a lot of areas. And I'm just now starting to go back in my youth, go back into some of these critical moments in the past that have shaped me who, to who I am. Because you can change, but if you still have the same behaviors you had as your old self, you'll eventually fall back. Here's what I mean. Last year when I came to Colombia, I basically changed everything, a lot of things. I quit all the vices, quit smoking weed, quit drinking, quit doing a lot of things. But what I didn't understand at the time, this was last June, last July, is that I still had limiting beliefs about money. I still had limiting beliefs about about everything, about everything, because I had changed my actions, but I hadn't fully changed my identity. I hadn't fully changed my identity. I still had the same behaviors from these a couple critical moments growing up, like that one with money, and there's more with something like uh, I was at an NBA game, one of the first NBA games I remember, and everybody just is acting like the people are, I think it was Blake Griffin. People were acting like this dude was Superman, and at home and at family reunions and friends and all this, you would just hear the guys talk about athletes as they're almost not human. And so, as crazy it is, for a while I would see these athletes and actors and all this as not even human. It was I was putting people on a pedestal. So that's another example of something that you could have had these moments early on that you might know or you might not, but until you ask yourself why you are who you are right now, why that still affects you, and you're aware, then you can fully change into that next version of yourself. But if you still have the same behaviors and the same limiting beliefs, you can't fully transition. You need to basically cut that old version of yourself off. And once you're aware of why you act how you act, and why you are who you are, and why you got to where you are now, and you kind of rewire history and go back a little bit and examine and just become aware, then you can fully change. Because like I said, for a while I didn't even realize the limiting beliefs about money that I heard when I was 10 years old were still affecting me. But but they it wasn't until I became aware, which was just recently, and that's why I'm starting to ask, trying to find out all these, why I am exactly who I am, why I act the way I act. Another one, for example, is when I'm out in public. I'm confident, of course, but sometimes there's still this little guard, and I want to be 100% free. I want to get to being 100% free, where you don't even think about your actions, and that's the goal. That's the goal, right? And in order to do so, in order to get there, you have to understand why it is now that you tense up. Why do I tense up a bit? Why do I feel like I got to maybe wear a bit of a mask at times? And so these are the questions I'm asking myself. And for everybody, we all have these moments that happened that shaped us, and maybe they're not serving you. A lot of mine previously weren't serving me. Limiting beliefs about money, limiting beliefs about these athletes and actors that they're better than me, limiting beliefs about just a bunch of things. And until you understand why these are, and you rewire them, then you're gonna fall back into the old version of yourself.